Hello once again. Welcome to Real Talk. Real issues seeking real solutions. Today we got a special guest on the show, Mr. Jared Budlong. He was the independent write-in candidate for governor back in 2022. And today we're going to talk about the rewriting of the Alabama Constitution regarding slavery and indentured servitude or involuntary servitude. And this is regard to the inmates that are currently being subjected to this slave labor. Jared is going to give us some insight on what we could do, some insight on a possible work strike within the Alabama Department of Corrections. So without further ado, let me introduce Jared Budlong. Welcome to the show. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? I see you're an advocate for change here in Alabama.
I am. So I'm a nearly 40-year-old white man that lives in lower Alabama, and some of you may be aware, I ran a what I called a Hail Mary campaign for governor in 2022 after seeing that our state set aside, I think it was about 40% of our COVID relief, the federal COVID relief funds, to build a new prison facility rather than spending it on what it was intended for, even against the federal government's suggestion slash urging. They didn't stop us, but they also, they the slap on the wrist and said you shouldn't do that, but then didn't stop us. So nobody wanted to say anything, though. There were, I think, 16 candidates before the primaries, and nobody was mentioning it. And I was unable to stop myself from trying to run. Is probably the best way to say that.
Right.
Wasn't a long-term goal. It wasn't never intended to run for political office. Not sure it's the thing for me, but I wasn't seeing anybody doing it, so I gave it a shot.
Yeah, and we appreciate that too. I've met Jared in person. He's a super nice guy. And I was really pulling for you because, like you said, nobody seems to give a damn. They act like it doesn't even exist.
Well, that I am becoming more and more aware is true for a lot of things, and that's
Yes.
A topic maybe for a different day because it's a little bit broader than kind of the scope.
Definitely.
It's a way of upholding the system, and the system was founded on white supremacy. So like we're ingrained and taught to do that by default. Most of us don't even think about it. We just do it, and we do what we're supposed to do, so to speak. And that's how the system gets upheld. So we don't speak up like we are here, or while trying to do the impossible and run for governor with no budget effectively. If somebody doesn't speak up, nobody will, and then nothing changes. So
Right.
But other than that, I live here. I'm still pushing for people to change. I've come to realize that my focus needs to be on getting people to change their hearts. They don't need more info. The info's there. I don't think more information is going to help change the society that we're in. We've got to get people to think of other people as human beings, and then
Yes.
they'll want to change what's happening around us.
Right.
Absolutely. How does this amended language in the Alabama Constitution affect the prison labor issues currently inside the Alabama Department of Corrections and its inmates?
Yeah, so a brief overview. So in 2022 on the ballot for not just the general elections that were going on, there were some amendments, and the last one of the amendments is actually to reword the Constitution, and that's something a lot of people were confused on, is they thought we rewrote the Constitution, but we really just we reworded it. So we didn't really change the contents for the most part. We shortened it by taking out things that were no longer relevant. We've reorganized it a few different ways. But one of the big things that people were pushing and have been touting as a big win is removal of the language that says servitude was still allowed as a punishment for a crime. So for anybody who's watching and isn't aware, like federally, the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude unless it's a punishment for a crime. So, and that's where our prison system, that's how it got here, in the condition or the form that it's in now is as a replacement for slavery, essentially. And ironically, Alabama in its 1901 Constitution abolished slavery in our Constitution further than the central government did, on paper at least, right? But they looked in involuntary servitude as a caveat. You can still do involuntary servitude, which wouldn't be quote unquote slavery, which I don't see a huge difference in. From a language perspective, I guess there's a slight difference. But in the Constitution that we just adopted, that was just a rewording. We removed that as one of the big actual changes. And so, on paper at least, our current constitution in our state says that you can't have slavery or involuntary servitude. As no holds, like there's no reservations, like it's supposed to be a, no caveats, no slavery, no involuntary servitude,
Right.
and that's an interesting thing that we decided to do with the conditions of our prison system when we were already short on the labor we would need while we still had involuntary servitude. We decided to remove the legal option for involuntary servitude, but yet we already didn't have enough staff. So, and it's a much bigger topic, but in theory, we would need even more people working inside the facilities. If those inside
Then
decided not
yes,
to work.
right. Because now, if they're not working, now you need somebody to run laundry, to bring food, to bring drinks, to the guys in lockup, things like that. Those are all jobs that incarcerated people do. Take out the trash, run the kitchen. Now, I'm sure you've seen the lawsuit that's been filed from the guys at the work camps.
So actually, I don't think that I've seen any recent lawsuits. Is this something new in the
Yeah,
last?
it's new. If I'm not mistaken, it was Lauren Farino that's filed it. I could be mistaken. It's new.
I believe that's her.
I think so. And she's filed it on behalf of some of the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated work release people, for that reason, for forced labor, and violating their constitutional rights.
I hadn't heard of that recent lawsuit, but it's not terribly surprising. The thing I'll say, just for the listeners at home, so to speak, like I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I just that we can't think that that's going to solve anything, because as all three of us are well aware, like there's a lawsuit pending the state of the actual state from the Federal Department of Justice against our state and the conditions inside the prisons. So like the lawsuit on its own, like that's something within the structure that's already irresponsible, right? Like the system is set up to not care. So like using that system to then try to make the system better is
Not going to work.
It may help, but it's not. We can't do it. It can't be done by itself that way. Like there's just no way to do it alone through the existing power structures. Like that doesn't make any sense as its own solution. So like yes, keep fighting with some of the existing options, but any progress that's been made in this country or anywhere else has always been made by going outside that system if the system is the problem.
Right. And I guess change is only going to come through legislation. Some other things are going to have to be looked at and brought into place before any real change can happen within the Alabama Department of Corrections.
Yeah, I mean the way the laws and things are set up is it's up as an institution that can kind of do its own thing without a whole lot of oversight from people who can effectively change it, right? So like we can potentially see what's happening. The laws don't say they have to hide things from us, but they don't have to tell us what they're doing. So as an example, a big thing that's been in the last couple of years is the drop in parole rate. And all of those discussions are behind closed doors, and they don't have to say why they are not granting parole. But they have to say by the book, they have to say why they do grant parole. So they have to give an excuse for why they're letting someone out, but they don't have to say why they're not. And it's things like that that we have to realize, like, the system is set up to maintain itself. So
Yes.
we want to make the system change, we're gonna have to do some things that are, potentially outside the normal structures.
Right. Let me ask you this question. Based on the amended version of the Alabama Constitution, by them restructuring the wording in it, could it be considered to be illegal to subject someone to indentured servitude at this point?
Yeah, so I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding would be yes. Generally speaking, like we should not be allowed to do that. We also, again, if we point back to the Department of Justice lawsuit, right? Our state's not supposed to do a lot of things already. That was already against the law, and they were doing it anyway. So this is now one more thing that's against people's human rights and against our own Constitution. Whether or not that's going to change our state's behavior is a different question. But I definitely think the intent behind the people who pushed for it was to make it illegal so it would stop. Like I fully believe that was their heart's intent. I am concerned whether or not that people will give up now that they think it's wrong, right? So the public, the general public, that was my concern initially. Was once we reword the Constitution and say that it's no longer racist, because that was the thing that was being touted at the time. It's like, well, they changed a couple words, but like the overall laws and structures haven't changed. So okay, we made it sound pretty. It sounds better, but
Yeah.
we've got to change this. We've actually got to make changes.
It has no
That's a good
teeth,
point.
so to speak.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And it goes back to what you said about opening people's hearts, because they know, they see it, they see they see all this stuff that,
Well, it's basically going to come down to society and Alabama taxpayers, along with the incarcerated citizens in these prisons today, to stand together and work together to actually say, this is the law and this is the way it needs to be adhered to, and we're not gonna stand for this anymore. We're gonna hold you accountable, and the inmates themselves. I really don't want to get out there on a limb too far with this, but the inmates themselves have a major role in this, and probably, in my view, the most effective way to proceed. Is just basically, not allow them to be illegally subjected to the slave labor and indentured servitude. And what I mean by that is maybe just sit down and, not break the law. Sit down and tell the state, you can't make me commit a crime. And in my view, that's basically what I see with this new right, is that the state is actually, in effect, causing these men to commit crimes.
Yeah, the thing I would, and again, not a lawyer, but the way I would see that needing to happen, and if there are any lawyers who hear this and I'm wrong, please let me know. But my understanding is you've got to set some kind of precedent at this point. So now that the law has changed, you've got to let the court decide whether or not incarcerated labor is considered involuntary servitude. So like from a public perception, I know that some people are going to push back and say, well, they chose to be in prison, right? So like we've got to get that decided. If we're going to use the system to try to, against itself, we have to get the system to agree that like something is wrong. So I think that's the first step, is like, in my opinion, would be getting a lawyer involved and finding a way to set a precedent and like take a specific case and like that. And I know that I'm asking I'm suggesting that somebody take a lot of risk there. Like don't mishear my my non-incarcerated self saying somebody should push back and say they're not going to work, because I'm partially aware of how dangerous it is inside, and like that, even the little bit that I know what that's a big ask to tell somebody to stand up to the system when somebody's trying to tell them they have to go do something. So I'm not saying it's a small ask, but to your point earlier, like there's only so much we can do here on the outside to try and fight that part of it. Somebody has to.
Right, there has to be some major media involved also to make people aware of what's really going on and how bad it is inside these prisons. We see it on social media, and we've seen it on the news, and everybody's seen all the horrific things that are going on inside here. But more needs to be done. Things need to step up, in my opinion. And these inmates, ultimately, yes, they're in prison for committing a crime or doing something against society that put them there. But they do not have to be treated inhumanely, without dignity, and be subjected to these harsh and violent and corrupt situations that are going on right now. And I think, and I stand behind anyone that would like to invoke their First Amendment rights to a peaceful protest and protest against these kind of conditions that are going on. And I support these men if they so choose to do that. Real Talk supports these men if they so choose to do that.
I'm right there with you. The thing I'll say is, I need to know, we need to know on the outside how we can support them, since there is a huge literal wall between us and them. And I hate using those phrases because it's they're just as human as I am. But I mean, physically, it's like the two different groups of people. We have incarcerated and non-incarcerated people. How can the general public actually support those on the inside who are wanting to do a peaceful protest other than moral support? Because there's only so much moral support can do when you're putting your life on the line at that point in some situations. So if that would be my first, the first thing is like, yes, I support the idea. I want to know how we can make it successful from the outside, other than just saying being cheerleaders. Which if that's what we need to do, then that's what we need to do. But it feels like there should be other things that we can do on the outside, other than cheerleaders.
Right. And I speak with a lot of the incarcerated citizens via Securus from time to time, and the general consensus is, they had this last effort they put forth in 2022, right, where they're shut down, and it kind of fizzled out. And what I'm getting from some of the men inside, there is a large number of those that are in support of a work strike within the prison system, but there are some that are still undecided. And what they're saying, what they're revealing to me is, we have no outside support. We don't have the support. So why should I put myself in harm's way or be subjected to the starvation as they did last time?
Yeah.
In retaliation for the shutdown.
I was about to ask, is that what you meant by no outside support? Like they didn't have somebody to help sustain their diet through that? And is that what you mean by that? Or moral support too?
Not necessarily. These men are conveying to me that, well, let me retouch on that. Yes, there does need to be some sort of method to help them maintain nourishment if they were to go on a shutdown. But what I'm getting from them is they just feel like society has walked away from them. And, I feel that, if more of society will stand up and say, hey, we got your back in this, that they will finally fully unite and bring us about. And I thoroughly believe that a workshop within the Alabama Department of Corrections, if it is implemented and stuck to, legislature will have no choice but to look at them.
Now, I agree with that last part. I feel like, and I'm not inside, but I feel like there's more outside support now than there was a year and a half ago. A lot more people, are seeing what's going on, or trying to help. In all different aspects. They had the committee meeting where the public showed up, and that's a lot more than we had a year and a half ago. But when you come down to some of the guys being hungry and things like that, I feel like that's where y'all then they share.
Right.
And if you don't have that kind of unity, I don't think it's going to last very long again.
Yeah, I'll liken it to any other kind of strike, right? So most recently, we had the SAG-AFTRA and Writers Guild strike that lasted, I think it was 9 months or so. And the only way that worked is they had ways to help each other out while they weren't getting paid. I mean, that was not that in the incarcerated situation 1-to-1 the same, but the point of getting paid is you have somewhere to live, somewhere to eat, and like the eating side where we're kind of talking about now, for the most part, there's other parts of the labor force that are affected as well, but primarily, like, you've got to eat. And if your crew is normally the ones responsible for making the food, and you're going on strike saying, I'm not doing this for free, well, like, how is everybody going to eat? And that's where on the outside, I don't know how we help when there's a literal wall and a gate and checkpoints for how food can come in. And like, even if hypothetically somebody wanted to get extra food in, like, how does that you can't do that for the entire crew. Like,
No.
you can sneak in some snacks, but like, you can't sneak in like food for 1,000 people. Like, that's not
Right.
that's
Right.
not gonna work.
And even if they
So
try to stockpile ahead of time, they're only allowed to buy so much, per store. If a strike happens, they're going to shut the store down again. So it's going to run out quick, what
So
they
there
do
needs to
have.
be-
So
there needs to
there,
be some kind of way of figuring out how to do that ahead of time. And I don't think that a public forum is the best place to figure out that strategy.
oh, no.
Right. But I would say that needs to be addressed. And if there's any way the public can help on that end, then we have to figure that out and make sure that those who care know and can start spreading the word and getting that set up, because the strike can't last forever when you're literally, if you're segregated from the rest of the society, like, there has to be a big plan in place, right? Because those strikes, like the SAG-AFTRA one, right? The reason it worked is because it lasted longer than the companies thought they could last in any stretch of their imagination. It lasted much longer than that. Like, their stated goal, for the record, like, there was an executive who basically said, well, I mean, they have to pay rent and eat. So, once they start starving and get kicked out of their house, then they'll change their mind. Like, that was the wording that was on the other side of that strike. And they're like, okay, well, that's why we have stockpiles. Like, we're ready to go through this for as long as it takes. And the companies I don't think they realized how much they had prepared. It's not perfect. The end of that strike wasn't perfect, but it's better than where they were. So
They got some good results though, correct?
they got some. Yeah, there's still some stuff they got snuck in that nobody's happy about, but it's they got some of the things they were looking for. But that'll be my big thing is, like, yes, legislation, something will have to change once we start hitting the money side. Like you can't. This has to cost the state something before they will. I'm using the word care, but it's not the right word, because they don't care as a structure, right? It has to hurt them before they will change anything.
Right. And I agree with that.
I support the effort inside, whatever they deem necessary. Like, figure out how we can help from the outside. And yes, let's go.
And we will at a later point get back up with you, Jared, and discuss some of these things.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, the thing that I want people to leave with, or I want to leave people with, is like when we talked about the rewrite of the Constitution, the idea, at least the big thing that we promoted, was, at least on the advocacy side, there are people who have been trying to get the Constitution rewritten, not reworded, but they've been trying to rewrite it for decades, and they've always had pushback. I mean, it's always been pushback after pushback after pushback. And with the rewording of the Constitution, there was absolutely no pushback from either party. There was no pushback for a rewording. And the thing I want people to think about is, why do you think a rewrite, where we have to come up with new language and new laws, why do you think there was pushback there, but not when we just reworded it and made it sound better? Like, what the end thought, like what I want people to leave with is like, there was no change in power. There was no change, no effective change, so they didn't care. They said, sure, reword it, that's fine. Everything looks great because we're not changing anything.
Right.
And what was the point other than to make it sound pretty and now say Alabama has a constitution from 2022 rather than a constitution effectively from 1901 still? Because the laws are the same, we just reworded them.
Right.
So it's problematic. I want people to think harder about the things that are happening around them.
And good point. But Jared, we thank you for joining us today, and I hope that this will make an impact and help to bring about some change for these men that are suffering. Once again, we thank you for being on the show. Sandy, we thank you.
Thank you. It was good talking to you guys. Jared, nice talking to you again. Always a pleasure.
As well. Y'all have a good rest of the day.
You too.
You too, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, folks. Another edition of Real Talk. Today's show was geared towards showing those on the inside that legally they do have a leg to stand on in exercising their First Amendment rights, and that the verbiage in the newly amended Alabama Constitution reflects that the people of the state of Alabama agree with it. Whether the system changes or not, that will have to be left up to the courts. However, this is a move in the right direction, and I hope it has given those incarcerated the hope and the vision to carry forward and to move in a manner of forcing the Alabama legislature to bring about some changes and oversight with the parole board. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I hope this gives inspiration to each and every inmate incarcerated in Alabama. And our thoughts and prayers are with you. Stay safe, stay vigilant. Victory awaits you, men. Have a great day. And if anyone would like to leave a comment or share anything on here, feel free to. If any of you men have a story you would like to share, you can do so via Secure Link, or abilities you have to reach out. Thank you so much for joining the show today, and everyone have a great day.